Greetings, fifth grade. I think you can hear me, but there's a 6 second lag here. Coming to you live from Lee Summit, Missouri. It's Mrs. Jamino's mini lesson. All right, so that was totally dorky, but that's okay. Last week's lessons in reading were about what was the author's point that they were trying to make by writing their article, and did they not only clearly make their point, but did they support it with clear reasons and solid factual evidence? Hopefully you enjoyed the activities that went along with that week's skill. And I did a mini lesson from this very company that did this week's as well. It's Clarendon Learning, and I'd like to give them a shout out because their lessons are really fantastic, especially when I can't go to my classroom and get what I might use. This is a really nice tool for me. So I'm going to go through this with you to help aid you with this week's lessons. It's the mini lesson I would do in the class, obviously without the you guys getting to have input part, which sucks, but it is what it is. So we are going to do this together. I do want to call attention to this fabulously beautiful anchor chart. This person that made this clearly is a better artist than I am. If you've been in my room, you know it's pretty bare bones, but it's a really nice comparison. So I'm going to go ahead and dive on in. Authors want the reader to see a topic from their point of view. The point of view is how they see the event or situation. In fiction, these are the thoughts and emotions of a character. In nonfiction, the point of view is the perspective from which the author is writing. Depending on the topic, authors write nonfiction in different points of view. While a first-hand account of an event or topic is based on an author's personal experience. The way I remember that is a first-hand experience means I saw it first. I saw it with my own eyes. So you're going to talk about diaries, autobiographies, memoirs, speeches, photos, videos, emails, and letters are considered to be first-hand accounts. So the person that's writing it saw the event themselves, and you're getting their thoughts, feelings, emotions. The author's perspective with regard to the event or topic may be influenced by his or her feelings about it. A first-hand account is also called a primary source because it is a description of an event from someone who was there to experience it. First-hand accounts may include personal opinions, emotions and feelings, and very specific details. Depending upon the perspective of the author, there can be many first-hand accounts of the same event. The age, gender, race, and country all contribute to different accounts of a single event. Guys, this leads me to think about this coronavirus, COVID-19, social distancing, quarantine. Do you see that I even had 4 ways to call this time? There are so many opinions, so many thoughts, so many bits of information out there. It's kind of overwhelming. And what you'll know is you could listen to the media all day long, and you can listen to the news, and you can listen to the government reports, but at the end of the day, compare that to getting the point of view or getting the perspective of a person who's living with or has lived through COVID-19. You know, you're going to get a little more specific view of it, and their thoughts and emotions are going to be connected to their experience having it. So it's going to look different than somebody on the outside that's just talking about this virus out there. It's hard to get one solid source out there because everybody's got opinions and people have their spin on it. So that's kind of a real life connection for what we're talking about. It's multiple accounts of, some topic. And again, right now the hot topic is this quarantine. So a second-hand account, think about it. If a first-hand account is I saw it first, then a second-hand account, you saw it second. So you saw the event through my eyes. It's based on the author's research rather than the personal experience. Encyclopedia or Wikipedia entries, biographies, news articles, textbooks are all considered to be secondhand accounts. The author's perspective with regard to the event or topic is usually neutral, meaning they're really not for it, against it. They don't put a lot of their opinion in there. It's just the facts, ma'am. So Again, they just state the facts about it. A secondhand account is also called a secondary source because it is a description of an event based on research from someone who was not there to experience it. Secondhand accounts may include key facts and information as well as information from several different sources. We talked about the civil rights movement right before this business happened where we had to stay home. And, you know, I can read somebody who researched the civil rights movement and they can give me facts about it. But is that going to give me the same experience as reading about someone who lived it? Reading something that Rosa Parks said or Ruby Bridges or Dr. King, listening to his I Have a Dream speech versus listening to someone who said, this is what he talked about. It's neither one. It's not about right or wrong. It's just different. And you need to, as growing up in this world, you have to learn to do this. This is not just something, hey, let's do this at school. You're going to need to do this to be an informed person as you grow up. So other types of accounts include instructions, recipes, and advice. And boy, do a lot of people have advice out there. Each of these tells the reader how to do, make, or accomplish something. Oftentimes they're written in second person using keywords such as you and your. Let's look at two first-hand passages about a situation from different authors. In 1963, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference joined a nonviolent protest in Birmingham, Alabama. Birmingham school children also joined the protest. Could you imagine being a child and going down to some big protest? Well, if you think it's nonviolent, then there wouldn't be a big deal, but we know things got pretty dark and sad and just terribly tragic. More and more people joined the protest and filled the streets. The police turned powerful hoses on the protesters, which to me is unthinkable. The police also used attack dogs on the people. Lots of people went to jail, including the students. People all over the country saw photos of what happened at the protest. That's something I really want to call to your attention, is that there were actual photos of what went down there so people could look at it and come to their own conclusions about it. But I'm going to read a couple accounts of what happened at this protest. And the first is by an officer, Officer Spendler. The second is by a protester named Winston, who was actually there. So I want you to see, as we read this, what was similar, what was different about what they saw. Officer Spendler: we were called to keep the peace at the protest. I imagined there would be many African American people, and I was hoping things would not get out of hand. I did not expect to see children protesting and being arrested. Then one of our fellow officers opened the powerful hose that we had brought in case the situation got out of hand. The peaceful protesters were hit with water, and I watched as older people and children ran screaming. We were afraid something would get out of hand with so many people. After that, dogs were brought in and attacked some of the protesters. The worst part of the whole thing was how there were newspaper photographers there capturing the whole scene. See, the officer isn't real thrilled about this all being captured in photos. All right, so account 2 is a protester named Winston. I turned up to the protest with Martin Luther King's words on my mind. We were here to protest nonviolently against segregation. I saw many people turn out, and many had even brought their children. Why not, I thought. This affected everyone regardless of age. Then suddenly out of nowhere I heard screaming. I turned to see the policemen shooting a powerful hose at many people. What had made them decide to do this? Our protest had been peaceful. We weren't breaking the law, and as far as I could tell, no one had done anything to make them use those hoses. I saw older people and children being hit with the water and tumbling down the street. That hose was just so powerful. And then dogs were attacking peaceful protesters. It was all uncalled for. I watched as the photographers snapped pictures. I could only hope that their picture would show things the way that I saw them. So see, the officer was like, oh man, I can't believe they took pictures. But this protester's like, boy, I'm sure glad that there was somebody to take pictures because I want them to see this travesty, this ridiculously violent attack on a peaceful protest out of fear and false assumptions. So I hope this helps you see that when analyzing multiple accounts of an event or experience, It's important to look for similarities and differences in each account. This is kind of what I said, but in these two first-hand accounts, both people were there. They both saw children protesting. They agree the officers were using a powerful hose and attack dogs. They both saw children and elderly people being hit with that hose. They both saw photographers taking pictures. But the accounts were not the same. In the officer's account, he's worried about the protesters because of their race, and that there's a lot of people. The officer was feeling afraid that something bad might happen. The officer also felt that the worst part was photographers taking pictures, which, again, this is my opinion, but I can't imagine me thinking that the worst thing about a situation like that was somebody took pictures of it to show what happened. Like, that's not the absolute worst thing that happened there, if you ask me. And I imagine you'll agree. So, in the protester's account, he was very excited to participate in a nonviolent protest with everyone in the community because it affected everyone regardless of age. The protesters saw the police use the water and dogs on people who were not breaking the law. The protester felt the photographers were the best part because other people would be able to see the bad thing that happened to them. So see, grateful that he could prove the things that went down and maybe get some other people to start looking at his perspective. So his firsthand account, who's to say that that wouldn't inspire someone to really rethink what they believed about the civil rights movement back then. So the accounts are different because each person has a different role in the protest. The officer has a job to do, keep the peace, and the protester feels the law should change for people. Each account comes from a person with a different social background, different age, and different race. Again, it's not about judgment, is it, though? It's about everyone's doing the best they can with what they have to work with, and we all have our filters, and we all have what we see, which is why it can be dangerous to only use a first-hand account and to not pull in some other information and try to get some facts yourself. It's just being a critical thinker, a critical learner. Especially like there's an election coming up this November for the president, and there's all kinds of issues that are going on in our world that need your attention. So you have to be able to understand what point is the person that wrote this trying to make, and what is their experience, and are they trying to like convince me to do something, or do they just want me to know about it? So I want you to think about this account that we talked about, this protest. And I want you to do a mini journal writing, and you can submit it to me on the Google Docs. You can take a picture and have your parent email or text it to me, whatever version you have. But I do want you to think about it. Think about what was described from the officer and the protester. And imagine, how do you think the account would have been different from a young child? Or an elderly person, or a shopkeeper that was looking out the window? How terrifying. So I want you to pretend, excuse me, that you are one of those people. And I want you to write just a short little summary, just a short little scenario of how do you think it would have looked different? What would you have said if you were a child in it or watching? What would you have had to say if you were an elderly person, or just again that person looking out the window watching it happen? So I want you to go ahead. That's my little journal challenge here. I hope this is helpful. You can go back, you can pause me, you can look any time you need to at the information within this lesson because it really will help guide you through this week's lessons. So until next time, happy learning, and I hope you're well.